The Bitcoin chart just printed something that hasn't happened since the top at 2021. And if this thing occurs, then it's completely over for the crypto markets. Even though Bitcoin seems to be pretty strong on this bounce and retrace, we are still in danger territory. And the last time this happened, many altcoins dumped 90+% off their highs, while Bitcoin dumped from that high of $69,000 down to a low of $15,400 for a 77% loss. And what makes this even more challenging is the amount of time it requires in order for you to simply break even. If you were to take a loss like that, you would also need a gain of 350%, which is very difficult to achieve in virtually any market, even in crypto. And this resulted in one of the nastiest bear markets in crypto history, with the collapse of Terra Luna coming sometime in May and June, and then Sam Bankman-Fried's FTX collapse caused Bitcoin to actually fall through its prior floor and all-time high, which was $19,000, something that's never happened before in all of crypto history. And if something like this were to occur again, then Bitcoin is likely going even lower and possibly even dump down to $40,000 for a 64% loss of that all-time high. Now, I'm not saying that is going to occur, but it is very much possible and potential, as all things are in markets. In other words, if something like this did occur, then XRP, DOGE, Solana, Chainlink would also get beat into the dirt, and so you really don't want to be caught in this move. Now, if you've been paying attention to my last few videos, then you'll know I've been covering the Trump-Elon feud and how it's hammered markets, creating uncertainty. So we have to cover a little bit of that in this latest video. We'll also be covering price action on all of the cryptos that we mentioned in this title to point out some of the most likely scenarios, as well as some of the major pivot points that could absolutely change your life if you play them right. So you're going to want to stick around to the end. Also, before we dive into the video, if you have a bit of time and you want to enter our $100 worth of XRP giveaway, which we're actually giving away tomorrow. So yes, there is a bit of urgency. This does happen every single week, but you should enter every single time in order to win. Then head on over to Bull Runners HQ over on X or Twitter. Check out the pin post and follow through with all three of the steps. We do verify that you actually follow all three of the steps before we ever hand out any XRP to one lucky winner every single week. Many people actually don't follow through with all three of those steps, so be sure to do that. And when you do, you can check out Altcoin Secrets, which unlocks the 23 secrets to help you become a crypto millionaire anyways. So really, there's just a bunch of value on this, and it really doesn't cost you that much. If anything, this is completely free for you to do aside from taking a bit of time. And as always, my friend, if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777. And if you're going to be the wealthiest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Hello and welcome back to the channel, my friend. If you're new here, my name is Paul, and you can find me on Twitter or X at PauliDeFi, PaulIEDEFI. First, I'm going to cover the Bitcoin chart. Then I'm going to cover the charts on all of the cryptos that we mentioned in the beginning of this video and in the title. We're talking XRP, we're talking Solana, we're talking Doge, we're talking Chainlink. And that's because these are some really solid cryptos that I believe are not only going to be around for quite a while and arguably into the next decade, and are going to be far higher priced than they are now. Still, you're going to want to play this right, because ultimately markets, and even crypto markets, are very similar to real estate. You actually make your money in the buy. So you want to buy right. And sometimes it's the wrong buy. But I think a lot of people tend to FOMO because they see prices going higher sometime. And then they're like, darn, I missed the move and I could have held or bought a lot more at this price. But it's very much possible and potential that this bull run might potentially be over. And I'm not saying that it is. So we're going to do a bit of analysis into prior cycles and just show you what we're looking at. First, I'm going to zoom out to the weekly time frame, and I'm going to get out of the way here. And by the way, I'm looking at the Bitcoin index chart. In other words, this is an index that typically aggregates Bitcoin price and volume from multiple exchanges. Kind of hard to verify where they're getting that data, but this is one of the longest standing charts in history on Bitcoin, considering it actually started tracking price action going back to 2009 of October at under a penny. And as you can see here, in September of 2010, Bitcoin was trading at about 5 to 6 cents. So we have a lot of data and context looking at this chart. And as you can see, whenever Bitcoin really started to fly and put in some new all-time highs and then put in a low, we're going to start with this all-time high coming into June of 2011 when Bitcoin pumped all the way to $20. It was a very new and nascent asset. Nobody knew what it was or whether it would do well, but I believe this was around the time of Silk Road into sometime like 2013, 2014, which is what caused the price of Bitcoin to skyrocket and soar, because it was being used a lot for illicit and illegal activities because it was untraceable. And so this was a really interesting time to buy Bitcoin. It was arguably also very risky. That said, you can see that when Bitcoin broke above its prior all-time high right here at about $18, $19 and pumped for a new all-time high, it actually never came and touched back down. In typical markets, you might get a break for a new all-time high, then a breakdown, touch the prior high as a support before breaking to new highs. In this case, Bitcoin is always traded extremely strongly and never comes back down to the prior high. In other words, new all-time high right here, and you can see that even then the support barely traded right back to that prior all-time high for its new lows. And again, these were wicks. In other words, the price on Bitcoin was extremely strong, or better yet, the support was. And so in this case, we never not only closed it down into these ranges, we never closed below the ranges. Yet again, new all-time high came in right here at $988, and you can see that there was likely a bit of resistance, a slight support, but really a false, full breakout, if you will. This wasn't a false breakout, just wasn't a great breakout. When the true breakout occurred, you can see that Bitcoin went for new all-time highs to 19,800 in 2017, and you can see that the low never came back down to $1,000. This is when Bitcoin became a truly strong asset and was proving itself to not just be a bubble. Then it came back down for a $3,000 low, never even getting close to $1,000. And yet again, when we broke out into a new all-time high for the very first time in history, not only did we close below or at the prior all-time high for a support, but we actually broke below and traded there for a period of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, almost 10 straight weeks with a lot of sideways ranging price action from June up until the breakout in January. This was almost a 6-month period of something that has occurred to Bitcoin for the first time in history. Now, what's interesting is that is very much possible and potential yet again. If we were to take the prior all-time high, and let's just assume we have our new all-time high in at $112,000, which I'm not going to say it is. I still think we're in a bull market. However, it's important to prepare for every potentiality so you don't get absolutely wrecked. It is very much possible that not only do we close at 60,000, but we actually close below. And my lows or support would truly be at that $40,000 range to $42,000 range, because this is where we've seen a lot of support and trading. In other words, I'll just take this right here, take this green area, box tool, if you will, and this would be my major support if we were to break down and this bull market is over. If I were to pull up that VRVP, you can see that we have far more support in these ranges than we do at the $62,000 level. And it's still far less in terms of total volume than we traded ever at 11, but I don't think we're going back there ever again. In other words, Bitcoin is truly becoming an institutionally adopted asset, and it's being removed from exchanges en masse. But it is possible that we could break down to at least $42,000 to even $40,000 on a breakdown below our prior all-time high. Now, the reason I'm saying that this could possibly happen is because when we zoom back out and look at the 2021 bull run and how we had a breakout above the prior all-time highs on a weekly right here, you can see that price action failed to break above this range with one final push to the upside before moving downward. Yet again, we saw some major moves to the upside, only to see the price action break below the prior high. In other words, put in a new all-time high and then break down. And in similar fashion, it would look something like this. This is about where we're at in the market right now, give or take a week. So right now, our chart looks very similar to how it looked in 2021. You can see prior all-time high. You can see sideways ranging price action. You can see new all-time high and a break back below the prior high that came in a few months before. If I zoom in on the daily time frame, again, very similar. A lot of people might be tempted to be very bullish here considering this is a strong uptrend. And who's to say that it couldn't have continued breaking to the upside? But that's not what occurred. If anything, all we saw is a lot of selling happen in this range right here. In other words, major institutional players were taking a lot of profit at the high and then all the way through this range as they made their money in the buys down here. And so what I'm going to do is exit that bar replay, okay, and say that if we were to hit, let's say, the $60,000 range, which would be our first major support, however, it's possible that if the bull market's over, not only do we come back to our prior all-time highs, but we come in lower. But when you zoom in on a daily, let me remove this, and this is why I'm saying it's very dangerous. If this occurs, and I'm not saying it's going to, but if it does, you're going to want to pay close attention. Okay, go ahead and put up a resistance line right here. You can see that this right here was our prior all-time high range to beat of about $105,900. You can see exactly like textbook, we came and broke above the prior all-time highs right here months later for a new all-time high of $112,000 in May of 2022. Very strong May. However, look, we broke right back down and we're back below the prior all-time highs. Again, if we want to make a comparison, look at how similar this is. We have support, or excuse me, resistance right here. All-time high breakdown, break above, right? For a new all-time high, bull trap, break back down the prior all-time highs months later, and all we saw was extended downside into one of the nastiest bear markets Bitcoin had seen, and for the first time in history, breaking below its prior all-time high and closing in that range for a period of almost 10 straight weeks. And if that were to occur, yes, not only are we hitting $60,000, we're breaking below there, potentially down to the $40,000 range, which would still give Bitcoin a lot of time for you to accumulate. But if Bitcoin hits these ranges, then our favorite cryptos are likely going a lot lower. When Bitcoin breaks down 70%, most altcoins are breaking 80 to 90+% down. That includes Chainlink, DOGE, XRP, and Solana. So let's dive into those charts. But before we do, let's make sure that we're really looking at Bitcoin properly and when we should buy. What's the pivot point? Okay, well, right now, first and foremost, I'd like to pull up some EMAs. I'm going to put that 10 and 20 EMA up. And as you can see that this is very much possibly and potentially a bear trap. People are bearish into this breakdown right here, only to see the price action break right back above. And we still have the 10 EMA, which is the blue line, above the orange EMA, which is the orange line, as long as the price crosses back over and arguably gets above the $106,800 range. So I would like to see Bitcoin break out to at least this price right here and hang above this price and also above the 10 and 20 EMA. Also, if I were to take a fib scale from the top right here down to the bottom of this range, you can see that our retrace range would be about that 6.5, which is 107,000 and potentially even 108. So anywhere in this box right here is where I would like to see Bitcoin not only hang out for a while, but break above. Otherwise, it's possible that this is just a retrace and then a breakdown for a new lower high in a longer term downtrend, which would look very similar to the 2021 bull run. Everyone thought Bitcoin was going to hit $100,000 that run, and it never happened. Bitcoin broke down to $15,000 and everyone got wrecked on their alts. So us being back below the prior highs right here is not exactly the most healthy thing, and that's what's kind of worrisome to me, even if we are seeing a bit of a bounce and a retrace into this range. It's possible that we break down here and then see more resistance and go even lower. And by the way, if we break below the low of $100,000, it's going to get a little bit scary for Bitcoin and the crypto market, and this could actually mark the top of this cycle. It's not something anyone wants to hear, here. However, I don't think this is going to occur. It's just something that I am preparing for. I still think we are in a bull run personally. And so I'm not really adding to any risk right now. If I'm invested in something, I'm likely going to hold it and watch what happens at that $107,000 range. And that's for every crypto in the market. But this is our major pivot point. I just like to see Bitcoin back above it and back above that 10 and 20 EMA. Now, taking that into consideration and context, looking at something like XRP, if Bitcoin does that, I'd like to see XRP also break above the 20 EMA and get back above $2.30. Because if we can get back above $2.30, this is going to be the range to beat. You can see that we had a resistance right here and here. We're below the 10 and 20 EMA. We had the 20 cross over the 10. We're being resisted at the 20 EMA. We're putting in new lows yet again on price action. So it's not looking that good or strong relative to Bitcoin right now, which leads me to believe if Bitcoin dumps, XRP is definitely dumping below the $2 range. And by the way, that $2.05 range is the major support for XRP. You can see that consistently. If I put a box tool right here, we've been supported going all the way back to December of 2024 between 205 to 195. Putting in a new low into this range is going to be very dangerous for XRP because the more you knock on a door, the more likely it's going to open. And so the more times you hit a support, the weaker the price action is, especially in this intermediate term and almost becoming a longer term downtrend. We have a series of what? Our all-time high, a new lower high, yet again a new lower high, and this is our lowest low between these two highs, and arguably these are our lows right here and here. So this said, this is a downtrend, and touching this range one last time would likely take us below the prior lows right here of 170. We could potentially double bottom in this range here, or it's possible that we bounce for a bit, see some resistance somewhere here, break even further down to at least 145 to 150. So I'm going to wait on something like XRP. I don't need to be adding to any risk even at that $2 range, which seems to be a decent support because it's been touched far too many times and we are in a downtrend. Instead, I would like to see some strength and Bitcoin to break out to a new range above 107 to 108 and hold that range one. And if that occurs, I'd like to see XRP follow and get back above the $2.30 range. This is where I will be buying. So let me go ahead and remove all of this. 230 is the price to beat. I want to be above 230 and arguably even above 240, especially when you pull up that VRVP. You can see that we have a stupid amount of resistance between 250 down to 235. So if we can beat this range right here, things are going to look healthy for XRP. We might actually go to new all-time highs this cycle, and I believe we will if Bitcoin does well. However, I'm not going to be adding to risk at this current moment in time. And by the way, as you're watching these videos, if you want to learn how to fully understand what you're looking at when it comes to technical analysis or any chart in crypto and make decisions based on what you see and learn how to check for pivot points and understand volume and all of the other tools, when to use them, when not to use them, head on over to altcoinpro.com. We have a classroom full of recorded courses directly for you, including our live call recordings over the last 7 to 8 straight months that are completely jam-packed with value. We have crypto foundations, building blocks of Web3, crypto security strategies, DeFi, and even my very own technical analysis essentials, where I teach you everything you need to know to be a pro on the charts, whether it's looking at TradingView, whether it's understanding drawing tools or candlesticks, the psychology behind every single candlestick, how to literally be a successful trader just by using candlesticks alone, whether they're bullish or bearish candlesticks or patterns, or how to use different time frames, when to use different time frames, from common indicators like moving averages. Let me go ahead and get out of the way. Relative strength, or the RSI, oscillators like the MACD and stochastic, Bollinger Bands, Fibonacci, and even what I call the 4 horsemen of technical analysis. If you were to just use these 4 things and you literally watched those 4 trainings, you could be a very successful crypto trader and investor. And whenever you click on each one of these lessons, for example, like candlesticks, not only do I show you live how to do this, or I shouldn't say live, but in the video, but I also share a ton of resources in all of these deals, whether it's different documents and PDFs that I've used over the years from professionals, or whether you want an ebook that I typed up for you on creating your winning game plan. Whatever the case may be, or however you want to approach crypto, we have everything you need here. We've actually had one of the best retentions on this platform in history. We are consistently sitting at over 1,000. We've consistently been sitting at close to 1,000 members, and that's because they're paying to get access to our comprehensive library of trainings, a bunch of altcoin picks that have been very successful for some of our members, access to technical analysis essentials, and my live calls I host every single Tuesday where people can ask me questions and I teach you live how to look at charts or DeFi yields or airdrops, which creates free money and opportunities. And in our DeFi yield quick wins, we basically tell you how to earn your money back by putting your crypto to work for you. So this $97 a month membership is absolutely free and everything else is complete and total value. And if you can't take advantage of one of those DeFi yield quick wins within the first week or two, then go ahead and ask for your money back, and we have a 14-day money back guarantee. So you literally have nothing to lose and everything to gain by simply checking this out. Watch this video, go to altcoinpro.com. Now let's dive into the rest of the video and onto the charts. Now let's dive into Solana and Doge and Chainlink. So one thing about Solana that I'm not loving, and it's not the fact that it's not a great layer one or the fact that they don't have a lot of volume and DeFi activity, arguably probably the most active DeFi chain on planet Earth. It's the fact that we put in a new all-time high on the Trump launch of the Trump token right here in January, like 18th, 19th, somewhere around there, right before the inauguration, and then broke down. Very similar to Bitcoin. And we saw a lot of ranging, and we've consistently seen a lot of ranging right here in this box between $210 down to about $115. The problem is we're seeing quite a bit of a strong sell-off right here, and we put in a new low below 164. We're currently below that EMA of 10 and 20 and now close to that support of 145. If we break below 145, we're likely going down to at least a minimum of 125 back down to 115, and this would be my new range of support. Let me go ahead and remove that box. And so it's very much possible and potential that we go there. But the reason I wouldn't want to add to a ton of risk is because this is a highly inflationary token. If Bitcoin breaks down from here, not only is Solana breaking down to at least 115, but it's likely going to put in a new low, and I would say at least to $84. There's just so much room for this thing to break down that sometimes it's important to look back at history and where this thing could potentially go to. And it's even possible and potential that not only do we break down to at least 80 to 75 bucks, but even possibly $45. There's just so much room here. And so this is the real issue with Solana. The fact that we have a new lower low, we put in an all-time high. This is a very volatile trade right here. I think I would rather just wait to see what happens at 115, but I don't want to be adding to risk. And Solana has a lot of overhead supply alongside the fact that we have a lot of resistance here at 145, or excuse me, support at 145 to 140. So a break below here is going to be very difficult for Solana to get back above. It literally needs to hold this range. It literally needs to get back above 180 for me to be a buyer. I would like to see it close healthily above 188 exactly. Otherwise, I'll wait for a breakdown at 118, see what occurs there, and then make a decision at some point here in the near future. Now, because this is such a volatile trade and we have so much room to the downside, I would likely probably invest in this slightly less than like a Dogecoin or a Chainlink because those are far closer to their lows. Let's go ahead and have a look now at Dogecoin. As you can see here, Dogecoin has already retraced the majority of its major move to the upside and is back down to that 18-cent level. And we have quite a bit of support from 15 cents and especially down to 8 cents. So it could likely see a lot less downside. Now, if it broke down, let's just say to 8 cents, that's still a move of like a 50% loss. In order to recover 50%, you need to move 100% to the upside, which is why sometimes it's better to just wait to see what occurs. But what I do like about this Dogecoin chart is the fact that we're back down or getting close to our range supports over a multi-year time frame, going all the way back. And let me go ahead and remove this to October of 2023. As you can see, I don't typically use trend lines like this, but this is a pretty strong trend line and a trade. In other words, here at 15 cents, you likely have a pretty decent trade considering this is a pretty strong resistance in the past once, twice, and then arguably even 3 times, and now has become a support. So anything from 15 cents or below to 13 cents is likely a good time to accumulate and buy, and anything below 13 cents is going to give you really good risk to reward potential. Because let's say you start buying at 13 cents, you stand to lose on a support 30 to 40%, which isn't bad. But if your average buy is there, knowing that we're likely going to hit a new all-time high and at least hit $1 at some point in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, however long the bull market lasts, your upside is 663%. So your actual downside is pretty limited from the current price up to the upside because this thing is already pumped really hard and then retraced really hard. Whereas Solana has held a really strong support way up above, but there's a lot of room to the downside. So if Bitcoin breaks down, yes, this thing's going to break down. I would like to dollar cost average somewhere at 15 cents all the way down to 8 cents. And finally, we have Chainlink, arguably one of the least exciting price action charts of the cryptos that we've talked about and mentioned. However, we do have a lot of resistance that Chainlink is now going to have to get back above at the $15 level, which is why I'm not currently holding it. But you can see that we are in, again, a strong uptrend. We have a series of higher highs and higher lows, with our major low coming in here in June of 2023. I think I'm in the way. So now you can see right there. That said, this is our major low. This is our next high, new low, new high. This is an uptrend. So if we were to take a trend line tool from the bottoms and just try to catch as many bottoms as we possibly can, we're back into that range. So your downside risk is actually pretty limited yet again, from $13 all the way down to like $8, where we have a year and a half's worth of support right here. This long, strong range leads me to believe that our downside truly is limited on something like this relative to a Solana because it has a lot of room to fall. This doesn't. Again, your downside risk is like 38%. But if you buy in this range in dollar cost average, your upside potential, let's assume you get an average price of $11.11. That's great. Your upside potential is at least to that prior all-time high and arguably a new all-time high. I could see Chainlink in the future hitting at least $52, but even possibly and potentially $75 for at least a 300 to 580% gain. So again, your risk is far more limited on something like this, and this might take longer to do than something like Dogecoin. So you're going to have to allocate properly because each one of these cryptos has their own personality. When it comes to which to buy, the safest is by far going to be Bitcoin. However, Chainlink is arguably one of the safest cryptos to buy based on their total adoption with their Oracle business. And then Dogecoin is just not going anywhere. It's the biggest and largest meme coin. It has the most mind share, and it's already retraced quite a bit. It pumps extremely hard, and so when it pumps, it's likely going to fly. So if that's more your style, then Dogecoin might be a better bet if you're only able to invest between Chainlink or Doge. But these are both very similar charts, limited downside, a lot of upside potential. It's just Chainlink takes a lot longer to move. So yes, I think Chainlink is going to be your safer play. However, Dogecoin might be the better play in terms of high octane and faster returns. And that's it for the video, folks. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to learn more how to do technical analysis or even how to think the way that I think when I'm approaching these charts, then go ahead and go to altcoinpro.com to check that out and join me on our Tuesday technical analysis call that I host every single week where you can ask me questions live. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.